Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is JP Bewley, CEO of Big Cloud Analytics. We're coming to you live today from beautiful San Francisco, California. We're out this week at the Big Data Business Forum. This is the second annual Big Data Business Forum that's being hosted in San Francisco today, and we're actually coming to you live from the conference, so I'll apologize in advance if we end up with a little bit of background noise today. But we wanted to talk a little bit about social analytics, obviously a very hot subject right now in the marketplace, and also a very confusing subject. We wanted to spend a little time taking you through some of the stats surrounding social media, as well as a successful way to put this to work for an organization. So I'm going to be your host through the course of today's webinar. We're going to be featuring a key and very recent breaking set of science from our Chief Scientist, Dr. V. Kumar. A few housekeeping items for today's webinar. All attendees will be in a listen-only mode. At the end of the webinar, we will switch to a discussion mode if there's any Q&A. This webinar will be recorded, and it will be available for replay on our website, actually probably by later today. In addition to that, I would encourage you to go out to the website at a later time and visit the Thought Leadership section of the website. You can see previous webinars out there, as well as our keynote address from the Big Data Business Forum, which was yesterday, on funding investments in big data and analytics. Specifically for today's agenda, just real quickly about Big Cloud Analytics and what we do. We'll do a little bit of a primer on social media, some of the common wisdom, as well as some of the common fallacies about social media, and just have a very kind of informal discussion about that. We'll go over some of the expectations around social media in the marketplace today, and I'll share with you some very staggering stats related to specifically to social media networks. And then we'll start to focus in on what it really takes to make social media work for an organization. We will take you through a very specific case study where an organization was extremely successful using social media and social analytics in their marketing. We'll cover some key summary and takeaways and then move to Q&A if there is any at the end. For those Twitter birds out in the audience, as always, the hashtag for this event is BCASMA, and our Twitter handle is BigCLD Analytics, BigCLD Analytics. So we would invite you to check in and tweet. With that, I'll move us into the presentation for today. So Big Cloud Analytics, we're an Atlanta-based data sciences and analytics company. We deliver embedded analytics for social, customer, and employee engagement. Specifically, we help marketers and business leaders find answers in big data that they care about. Things like who are my customers, my best customers tomorrow. Not historically who have been my best customers, but which customers have the highest potential to be my best customers in the future. What will they buy next? And we can predict what they will buy next with an 88% accuracy. How do I find more customers like my best customers? So how do I expand my universe and acquire good customers more profitably? Which customers should I fire? Because you should not be focused on retaining all of your customers, and you should not be focused on saving all those customers when you have customer service failures. We also have a suite of analytics around salesperson lifetime value, as well as employee engagement that are more on the B2B side. We do this for both business to consumer companies as well as business to business companies. About 80% of our suite of analytics is focused business to consumer, 20% in the business to business space. And we do this on the two key tenets. One is highly predictive math, and the other is a cloud-based scoring engine. The highly predictive math is based on Google Research award-winning methodology for social media analytics, which will be the topic of today's discussion, as well as 200 scholarly articles, 6 Harvard Business Review articles from one of the top 5 marketing data scientists in the world, our chief scientist, Dr. V. Kumar, and we have a tremendous amount of operational experience of actually putting big data and analytics like this to work for brands, and have delivered over $6 billion in return on investment for the marketers and brands that we've worked with. So social media, obviously, it's a big deal, and it's a big data deal, and that's actually been one of the focuses of the Big Data Business Forum here over the last couple of days, is the role of user-generated content and streams in social media. But interestingly, everybody's doing it, and to a large extent, about 80% of global consumers across a variety of geodemographic barriers are influencing preferences and purchases and the decisions of others through social media and word of mouth. The principal focus for marketers has been blogs, forums, and key user networks where they've been investing. And the problem in large, in mass, in the marketplace today is that marketers are still trying to figure out how to make investments in social media generate a return. And so we'll dive into that very specifically and start to put some usable frameworks in place for you that will give you some insight on how to do this successfully for your organization. So just kind of having a discussion around some of the social media common wisdom and fallacies and some of the major kind of mystification points in the marketplace, if you will. Surprisingly, it's hard to believe, but social media has now been with us for over a decade. And so what have we learned over the last 10 years as it relates to social media? Well, one thing that we've learned is that social media marketing is hard to do, and it takes a lot of time and commitment. What I would suggest to you, one of the best guiding principles, there's a lot of talk about authentic conversations in social media, and you can't really be selling in social media, and you have to contribute more to the community than you take away. And in principle, all of those things are true. But one of the things that I like to think about as it relates to social media is because it really is inherent to our behavior as human beings, and that's one of the reasons this social phenomenon is taken off so much, is I would encourage you to think about social media like the type of manners that you would have at a dinner party in some settings, and I would also suggest you to think about social media as what it means to be a good neighbor. So if you think about the way that you would interact with folks at a dinner party, if you think the way that you would interact with folks as a good neighbor, you're doing a lot of helping out. You're caring, you're invested, and I think that's a pretty good metaphor for the way to think about involvement in social media as a business overall. There's a lot of questions about whether there is return on investment in social media. And one of the things I think that has driven that kind of perception at the board level is that the pay-per-click advertising, the in-news feed advertising, the in-stream advertising in Twitter has been met with mixed success. And people, I think, expected it to behave a lot like Google AdWords, where it was much more of a direct response vehicle. And what marketers have learned over a period of time is that it maybe doesn't behave in exactly that same way. You know, I used to hear organizations talk about, you know, we're beginning to do impressions in Facebook, but we're not thinking them as a direct response vehicle. We're now more so starting to think about them as impressions, and they are above the line banner ad style of activities, and that's the way that we're going to get value from them and use them. I think there is some truth in that, and you'll see through the course of the discussion here that most social media campaigns that are successful, I think, have a length of tenure to them. That's not always the case. There are some campaigns in social media that are very successful, that are very time sensitive and happening very quickly. And social media is also very effective in a local context. And so small and medium businesses are beginning to use it pretty successfully in a hyper-local type of scenario. That kind of hits at that next point there, which is it's like any other channel, but advertising doesn't work. And that gets back to, I think, kind of that metaphor of a good neighbor. I think it can be successful in helping you sell products and services for your brand, as you'll see from the case study. However, you don't go out to your neighbor every day and basically do an on-the-spot yard sale, and you can't do the same thing in social media and expect to be successful. There's so many people using social media today, I can't seem to reach them. We'll show you very specifically how one retailer was able to reach people in mass using social media. I'm not sure what influencers do. I'm not sure how to connect with them. I'm not sure how to profile them. I'm not sure how they can help me. And so we'll talk today about specifically how do you invest in influencers, how do you turn them into advocates for your brands, and use those to generate a return. And then it's interesting because from a pure analytics, quant jock type of perspective, there's this notion out there that no one can really truly calculate the value of what a Facebook like is worth. Like me on Facebook, and that gets you some level of reach, it gets you some level of awareness, but what should I invest in a consumer to effectively acquire, to use an old direct marketing term, to acquire that Facebook like? And actually you can. You can calculate what the value of a Facebook like is worth, and we did it in this particular case study. And this other fallacy here of social media is a fad. And one metaphor that I've liked to use for quite a while now about this is I think that the phenomenon of social media in large itself is not a fad. However, the properties that are hot at any given time absolutely are. And just the same way we're seeing a fast migration off of Facebook from the younger generations to Instagram, and the reason that Twitter's kind of going after the whole Vine concept is that social media in a lot of ways is sort of like the Paris runway. What's hot in the spring is not necessarily hot in the fall. And I like to use that Paris runway fashion analogy for social media. Social media is here to stay. However, the hot properties will be somewhat fickle, and you'll see them evolve over time. And the persisting companies here, I think, will be companies that figure out how to reinvent their user interface and make it relevant as new cohorts and generations begin to come online. It has a tremendous amount of promise, and Wall Street fundamentally believes this, and investors are placing tremendous bets in social media. Facebook, its IPO, despite a rocky start, is now valued at $120 billion. The Twitter IPO just literally in the last few days came out, and they're now valued at $24 billion. Although I think they've had a rough day in trading here over the last 24 to 48 hours. LinkedIn went public in May of 2011 and is now currently worth $26 billion. And just to share a couple of interesting stats that are not on the slide here with you, but are just phenomenal and quite staggering. As of October of this year, October 2013, Facebook has surpassed 1.19, so basically 1.2 billion monthly active users. What is that? 1/7 of the world's global population are active monthly Facebook users. 874 million active mobile users on Facebook every month. 728 million active daily users on Facebook every day. Just absolutely phenomenal. Twitter now has 232 million active Twitter users on a monthly basis. And interestingly, with the market valuation of $24 billion, the value of an individual Twitter user. So if one of you out there on the webinar today has a Twitter account, basically if you take the number of active Twitter users and you divide that into the market cap of $24 billion, you are worth $134.47 is the market value of every Twitter user. Shockingly, Twitter users are growing 39% year on year, the number of active users. But here's the scary stat as a marketer. 55% of users on Twitter say that they have never seen an ad. Now, the reality is that they have, but their awareness and recognition of those ads is about only 1 out of 2 actually have felt like they've seen an ad in Twitter. So that complicates the equation from a marketing perspective. Obviously, if they don't believe that they're seeing ads on Twitter, a lot of investments going into to social media. 2012, $1.7 billion. 2013, 2.3. 2014 is expected to be $3.1 billion. These are small numbers overall when you talk about the amount of global advertising that's spent, but the growth rate is significant, 34% year-on-year growth in that investment. Interestingly, that almost correlates with the growth rate of active Twitter users, 34% year-on-year growth for the investment, 39% year-on-year growth for active Twitter users. So big difference in the expectation of it's being valued at by Wall Street in the marketplace and what's actually being spent and the profits. Twitter is actually trading right now at about 20 to 24 times revenue is the market cap. Facebook is about 17 times, I believe. And so just some amazing multiples right now and amazing expectations for these companies over the next few years. Now, the reason that I focus so much on Twitter and Facebook statistics in those facts that I gave you there is you'll see that in this case study, those are the two social media networks that we really focused on for this particular brand. As I mentioned, social media advertising and social media analytics is very similar to any sort of long-term customer value, customer engagement style of project. It's absolutely a journey. And so I would encourage you to think about this as a series of steps that you're going to commit to over a longer period of time, and your ability to make investments in the community over a period of time to be able to generate and extract these returns. So I think that is the right mindset to have as you go into these types of social media analytics, social media campaign type programs. So that said, I'll take you now specifically to the case study about one of the social analytics projects that we've done here over the last few years. This project is very exciting in the sense that Google and WPP, so WPP, one of the largest market research funding organizations in the world, Google, obviously everybody knows Google, ran a worldwide crowdsource contest. And they do this, they've got an annual program that they do where basically they put up a prize for who can come up with the best algorithm to solve a particular problem. And they crowdsource that worldwide. They invite entries from students and academics and business leaders from around the world and run a competition. And one of the competitions that they ran was who can come up with a suite of analytics to calculate the value of a social influencer. And in that particular contest, our chief scientist, Dr. V. Kumar, was selected as one of the winners for the calculating the value of the social influencer, and won the Research at Google award, and that is the topic of this particular case study. So this is science that is at the forefront of social analytics and recognized worldwide as being the top approach for calculating the value of a social influencer. So very excited to share this with you today. So this case study, the goals that were specifically set out for coming up with this analytics framework were, can influence be captured in monetary terms? And so people put a lot of metrics around social media, but those metrics in many cases do not translate to business metrics. And so one of the goals that we had in this was, can that be translated into monetary terms? In addition to that, can we quantify the benefits to the brand that we're working with? And can, over a period of time, can you change a consumer perception on things like brand identity through the halo effect of influencers in the marketplace? As a result of that, what would be the net value of an influencer to the bottom line of an organization? Can it drive incremental profit? Can it drive incremental sales by influencers? And is there a net cost or a net gain by investing in influencers in that way? And as a result, are there intangible effects in addition to the monetary impacts of focusing on influencers and social media, and can that be predictable? And through the course of doing this, several traditional social media axioms, if you will, were dispelled. One of which was there's this adage in the marketplace right now that negative word of mouth is 7 times more destructive than positive word of mouth. And what we actually found is that is not true. Over a long-term longitudinal study, we found that negative word of mouth impacted sales about -5%. And over that same period of time, positive word of mouth actually impacted sales positive 10%. And so positive word of mouth outpacing negative word of mouth is very, very meaningful to brands overall. And that was one of the conventional wisdoms of social media that just did not hold up to analytic scrutiny. So that was very interesting. Now, in doing this, we also designed a bit of a gamification element to this social media campaign and social media analytics, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go. So the study specifically, we wanted to do this in the retail sector. We looked at a variety of different retail organizations to do this with, and one of the key aspects of this is that we needed to combine unstructured data from social media with structured data from point-of-sale transactions, and to be able to tease out the lag effects for cause and effect between word of mouth and sales. So we ultimately ended up doing this longitudinal study and analytics with Hokey Pokey. Hokey Pokey is a large premium ice cream retailer. They have a strong local presence in India. They were founded in Mumbai. They've now spread out to 4 states across India. And you could think of those, for those of you that are in the United States, you could think of them as being very similar to a Cold Stone Creamery, where you can effectively create your own creation. It's a variety of different ingredients, and you mix them together, and basically you come up with your own ice cream. And that individual creativity was a key aspect of the social media campaign, and one of the key aspects of how we engaged influencers overall. The customer base was this is focused on a millennial demographic cohort, obviously a highly engaged cohort for social media. In the markets surrounding this particular retailer, there were 50 million individuals in this cohort, and they were spending on average 3 hours a day or more in social media. This study period was longitudinal in nature. It was done in a 3-phase approach, which most of our projects are done in a 3-phase approach, from pre-analytics to insight to actualization. And in this particular instance, this was a 19-month initiative. The preliminary phase, the pre-analytics phase of this, was to really identify the scope of penetration by influencers and which were the ideal social platforms to use. So as I mentioned, the scope of penetration by influencers here was a 50 million individual cohort. They were a millennial demographic, and the ideal social platforms to use, what we found were, in this instance, it was going to be Facebook and Twitter. Moving then into the insight phase and kind of the broad-scale rollout of this was a pre-test phase. And the focus on that was pointing the software at measuring word of mouth and influence. And a couple of the key aspects that we were looking for there related to message format were tone and language, and being able to put some sort of quantifiable, scorable elements around the unstructured conversations that were happening in Twitter and Facebook, and to be able to tag them based on tone and language. And then go to the broader actualization phase where we put those influencers to work effectively across 2 campaigns to stimulate word of mouth, and then track the lag effects and the impact on sales. through that pre-analytics phase and the pre-test phase, what we determined, as I mentioned, was that the key social networks to focus on in this particular instance were Twitter and Facebook. They were the optimal platforms. Over that longitudinal period of time, we evaluated 829,000 conversations over 6 months. That represented about 1,700 actual active social media users. We then selected 10 seed customers that were the most active on social media. Of 203 Hokey Pokey customers that were participating in the conversations, we actually engaged them. We actually brought them in. We did training with them and designed a campaign around Build a Brownie, which was effectively, allowing them to create their own brand of ice cream, if you will, and there were specific hashtags for their brand of ice cream. And then when they would go out and they would consume this ice cream, they would tweet about it. And that allowed us to look at density of networks. It allowed us to look at reach, and it allowed us to identify which influencers were able to spread the message deeper in their social networks and who had the greatest influence in their primary, secondary, tertiary connections, and so on. And then the gamification element that came into this is that, in addition, what we did is we basically created a contest with these influencers, and on a weekly basis, whoever was able to generate the highest word of mouth reach and penetration into the social networks would be recognized and win a prize. The prizes were pretty straightforward. I mean, this is a pretty cost-effective media spend, in the sense that if you're leading for a particular week, we bring you into a Hokey Pokey location. We give you a T-shirt. We take a photo of you and a celebrity. Obviously, that photo of you and a celebrity, you're going to retweet. You're going to reach that deeper into your network, and you can kind of start to get a sense of how the flywheel starts turning, and a lot of buzz begins to get generated in the marketplace with these influencers. But I think that's another aspect of this that is key, is that this gamification element in these influencers that have a lot of reach and density into the social networks. There was a lot of incentive to compete and try to outpace other influencers in the network. And as you think about your social media campaigns and you think about the analytics surrounding those, I think that is a key aspect. And one of the other aspects that is very inherent to human behavior is this notion of gamification. And so, again, being a good neighbor, creating contests, being authentic were some of the key aspects that ultimately makes this successful. So with that done, this is a high-level overview of the research and kind of going through the timeline. So this started in January of 2009, where we began this pre-analytics phase and beginning to look at market scoping, doing the preliminary market research to understand social media penetration and how that's stratified out by different cohort groups and different individuals. That moved us then into June of 2009 timeframe, which then we kind of focused in on the network identification and which social media networks were going to be the most important to us overall, mapping target consumer bases and the social media profiles of those target consumer bases, doing the software rollout and testing to measure the conversations and to be able to figure out the tagging and taxonomy for the tone and format of the messaging that we talked about in the previous slide. In December 2009, we actually began the messaging aspects of this, and to actually empower the influencers and get them out in the marketplace and start to vary the marketing mix and to maximize the spread, the influence, and the impact overall, which then kind of moved us solidly into the pre-test phase. We moved then into the actualization phase in the time frame of February 2010, which we began to drive a high degree of personalization. And in the background this entire time, there's tracking and analytics codes that are surrounding those hashtags, so that we can monitor what's going on in the social media. And by the way, this was an opt-in campaign. And so by having the social analytics going in the background, we were able to test various hypotheses and fine-tune as the campaign is running. And then the focus really begin to focus on the viral aspects of this and how to drive this deeper into social media and to get a much greater influence. In the background, all of this is going into all this unstructured data is being basically compressed down into structured data at a metadata level, pushed into a database. And then at the same time, you've got point of sale transactions, obviously very structured data feeds that are coming in from the retailer that are coming into the same database. So think of a Hadoop style environment where you have unstructured data, semi-structured metadata, and very structured point of sale transaction data that are all coming into the same environments for the learning and analytics. And that drove really two key metrics that became the basis for the calculating the value of a social influencer. Customer influencer effect, CIV, as well as customer influencer value, CIV. And CIV is one of our core suite of analytics that we talk about on our website. But that is effectively what is the customer influencer value of a particular consumer, which, by the way, is a component of their overall value to me as an organization. So customer lifetime value really is made up of a few major components: the value of the transactions you contribute to me personally through your products and services that you buy with the firm, the influencer value that you have through social media, which is identified in this case study, the referral value that you have through offline pass-along, and the knowledge value that you contribute back to the brand, and which can positively influence research and development and the product development roadmap for a particular company. We'll talk about those other metrics in later webinars. But this is a high level of the approach that we used analytically to determine customer influencer value. So moving forward from there then, what are the results of this? In previous webinars, we've talked about that funding for big data and analytics initiatives really come from three principal areas. We refer to them as the blue, the green, and the orange. The blue being incremental revenues, the green being people, process, and technology cost, and the orange being media spend or cost of sale. This particular campaign paid for itself in the blue, which were incremental revenues. And as I mentioned, if you look at the data use grid for this particular project, we had point of sale transactions, which were structured and they were infrequent in nature, about the ice cream that was actually being purchased at the different retail sites across 4 states. We had the influencer conversations that were going on that we were distilling down to structured or semi-structured metadata in Twitter and Facebook on a monthly basis. And we had the ongoing conversation streams, which were unstructured and happening in real time across the entire longitudinal aspect of this study. As I mentioned, overall, we monitored 825,000 conversations over that 6-month period in Twitter and Facebook across 1,736 individuals. Out of that, we identified 100 influencers out of that 50 million millennial cohort that had greater than 20% connectivity to the rest of the community and were able to drive the message very deeply into their social networks. We designed a campaign of Build Your Own Brownie that was designed to reward influencers and get them to take some level of action and to tweet about or to mention on Facebook using a specific hashtag their creation and their own brand of ice cream, if you will. And there was a weekly competition for those influencers for whoever could spread the message most and deepest within their networks, and we would bring them in and give them prizes, give them T-shirts, give them photos with celebrities, which obviously then they put back out into social media for greater recognition. So gamification, again, I can't stress that enough, was a key aspect of this particular analytic approach overall. So net out of all of this over this time frame, the results were phenomenal. This is by far one of the most successful social media return on investments that I've seen in my experience working with social media and social media analytics. It generated a 40% increase in brand awareness for the retailer within that millennial cohort over this time frame, which is just absolutely astounding that influencers alone in social media could generate that type of halo effect for an organization. This is the equivalent of that in an above-the-line media spend that you'd have to spend in television advertising or billboard out of home or any other variety of above-the-line media to build brand awareness. That same analogous spend would be in the tens of millions of dollars. So just fantastic, phenomenal results in driving overall brand awareness. But more importantly, where the rubber really hits the road and where the bottom line is it drove a 40% increase in revenue growth over that same time frame. So, this was a huge money maker for this retailer during this time frame and generated an 83% return on investments for these two single campaigns. So phenomenal return on investment by combining social media analytics, marketing campaigns, and gamification together. As I mentioned, when stacked up head-to-head scientifically with all of the other approaches for calculating the value of a social influencer worldwide in the Google WPP competition, this was the Google Research Award winner for calculating the value of a social influencer. So arguably the best approach for calculating the value of a social influencer available in the world today. So, what does it take to make social media work, and kind of bringing us in for a landing here in summary? One of the key aspects of this is looking at that overall cohort of 50 million millennial individuals that were involved in Twitter and Facebook conversations, and being able to, through analytic methods, be able to determine 6 to 7 key attributes that identified what a real influencer or who a real influencer was, and being able to focus in on those real influencers was one of the key aspects of driving success for this particular retailer. So that's one of the first things that you've got to get right overall. Then designing a rewards program that sticks to some of those key tenets that we talked about earlier about kind of being a good neighbor, being authentic, having a gamification element to it so that it's fun and people want to participate in it, and giving them the ability to be creative and expressive by creating their own brand of brownie, their own brand of ice cream, and giving them their own hashtag for that was also very important for this. But the rewards and the giveaways in this were not expensive overall. They were T-shirts, they were little prizes, they were photos with celebrities. And so the media spend in support of this doesn't have to be huge. What's more important than the media spend and the rewards and the prizes and what you spend on those in this is getting the influencer analytics right, getting the overall campaign design right, the gamification right, and then the prizes are fairly a nominal cost in this overall. It does take time and commitment. As you can see that we did this particular study over 19 months. The actualization phase of this, where it was running live in the marketplace, it was out of the pre-analytics and insight phase, was only 6 months in nature. But this was a commitment to a journey that this particular retailer made. But as a result of that, they learned, as all of you can, that brands that are willing to commit to this journey can make and drive big return on investments for your organization by leveraging social media analytics, social media influencers, and social media marketing. And the bad joke that I always like to make as it relates to journey is don't stop believing, because it is important to have a longer term view and commitment on this. So with that, I'll put some contact information up on the screen here for any of you that have questions at a later time that you maybe want to follow up on, or if you want to visit the thought leadership section of our website. I would encourage you to do that on this particular case study on the thought leadership section of our website, and actually featured on just the main homepage of bigcloudanalytics.com. If you scroll down under our featured science section, right now there is a video with DK, our chief scientist, where he's talking specifically about this particular project, and he'll give you a little bit more of the subtle nuance of some of the key aspects that made this successful from his point of view. Very good and informative video that you might want to take a look at there as you think about social media analytics for your organization. So with that, I'm going to transition us to Q&A mode here to see if there are any questions about social media analytics. And if not, we will adjourn. And this, as I mentioned, this webinar replay will be available out on the website, as are our other webinar replays and many other case studies and thought leadership pieces that are available there for you to learn more about what we do at Big Cloud Analytics and some of the successful approaches for marketing analytics, customer engagement in general. So let me see if I can switch us over here to discussion mode. One moment, please.
All attendees are unmuted.
So I'll open the floor up. Any questions related to the case study, social media analytics that I can answer for you? All right, don't be shy. It's always difficult to get somebody to lead out with a question at the end of these. I'll pause here for just a moment just to make sure that nobody's talking to their mute button, and if not, we'll go ahead and adjourn. So one last opportunity here. Any questions related to social media analytics? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Hope you found this helpful and informative. The replay will be out on the webinar later, or out on the website later today, and you can review at your leisure or pass along to your colleagues. Again, thanks for the time, and we'll see you next time.